I was 42 years old, a mid-level marketing manager named David Chin, and for 12 years I believed I had the perfect, stable suburban life. My wife, Amelia, was the picture of the dedicated homemaker, a suburban queen bee who managed our comfortable existence with meticulous precision. We had the house, the 2 kids, the predictable rhythm of routine that felt like security. But 6 months ago, the rhythm broke. It started subtly. Amelia, who previously shopped at department stores, suddenly developed an expensive taste for European designers. She started spending hours on her appearance. And then came the trips. Not weekend getaways, but mandatory corporate retreats. Amelia hadn't held a job outside the home in nearly a decade, yet suddenly she was flying to Miami, Aspen, and eventually the south of France, claiming she was consulting for a niche marketing firm she'd vaguely mentioned starting. The stories were thin, but the expenses were thick. The first real seed of doubt was a $5,000 charge on our shared credit card for a specific designer gown purchased while she was supposedly attending a low-key sales seminar in Denver. When I asked about it, she gave a vague, irritated explanation about business attire requirements for a client meeting. The secrecy wasn't just about the trips, it was about the change in her. She was cold, calculating, and distant, all masked by an overly sweet facade whenever the kids were around. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was finally pursuing her ambition. Maybe she deserved this glamour. But the pit in my stomach grew heavier with every evasive answer. Then came the Monaco trip. She claimed it was a week-long conference for high-net-worth female entrepreneurs. The dates were firm, the location, Monte Carlo, was luxurious, and her preparations were excessive. I watched her pack, noticing the expensive new luggage and the nervous energy she couldn't hide. That was when I snapped. I wasn't going to live in fear and doubt anymore. I told my boss I needed emergency leave, booked a last-minute flight, and told Amelia I had a sudden project that would keep me busy, knowing she wouldn't check. I was flying across the Atlantic, ready to surprise my wife and put an end to the paranoia. But deep down, I knew I wasn't flying there for a surprise reunion. I was flying there to find the truth, whatever the cost. I just didn't realize that the truth would be wearing a $50,000 watch and owning a super yacht. When I landed in Nice and took the short helicopter transfer to Monaco, the opulence was overwhelming. I checked into a modest hotel, far from the grandeur, near the address Amelia had given me for her conference center. The plan was simple. Show up at the venue, surprise her, and see the look on her face. If she was happy, great. If she wasn't, I demand an explanation. I called the supposed conference venue, the Fairmont Monte Carlo, and asked to confirm the booking for the High Net Worth Women's Summit or anything similar scheduled for the week. The concierge checked, then double-checked. Sir, we have no events matching that description, nor do we have any large corporate bookings for the dates you specified. The line went dead, but the sound of my world collapsing was deafening. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a schedule change. The conference didn't exist. My initial reaction was pure, blinding panic, followed by a cold, surgical clarity. I wasn't dealing with a simple affair or a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, layered lie. I drove to the address she'd provided for her accommodation, a sprawling, gated private residence overlooking the harbor, not a corporate hotel block. This wasn't a business trip. This was a lifestyle. I pulled over, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. The fear of being wrong was gone, replaced by the certainty of betrayal. I didn't want to confront her now, not here. Confrontation would give her warning, allow her to spin the narrative. I needed proof, documented and undeniable, to protect myself. I knew Amelia had mentioned something vague about ocean views when describing her temporary accommodation. I decided to stake out the harbor area, the heart of Monaco's elite activity, where the true players conducted their business. I settled into a cafe with a view of the docks, pretending to read a newspaper while my heart hammered against my ribs. I had shifted from the role of the trusting husband to the methodical investigator. I had to know not just what she was doing, but who she was doing it with, and more importantly, why. The financial investment she was making in this deception suggested the payoff was massive. If you've ever had that gut feeling that something was fundamentally wrong, that moment when your world tilts and you realize the person you love is a stranger, hit that subscribe button. Because what I discovered next, after confirming the conference was a complete fabrication and deciding to stake out the area, turned my entire world upside down. I needed to see how deep this rabbit hole went before I made a single move. I spent the next 24 hours feeling like an absolute fool. I was David Chen, a mid-level manager from Ohio, staking out billionaires in Monaco. Every few minutes, I questioned my sanity. Was I overreacting? Had I flown 4,000 miles to ruin my marriage over a scheduling error? Then, late the following morning, I spotted her. She emerged from the luxury residence I'd staked out, walking with a self-assured stride I had never witnessed back home. This wasn't the Amelia who worried about PTA meetings. This was Amelia 2.0. She was wearing a perfectly tailored white suit, large sunglasses, and jewelry that screamed old money, not suburban mom. She was speaking animatedly into a small, sleek phone, definitely not the standard issue phone she used for family calls. She looked confident, glamorous, and utterly ruthless. I immediately raised my phone and started recording, documenting everything. The clothes, the location, the time. I followed her discreetly, maintaining a safe distance. She walked toward the harbor, past the rows of impossibly expensive cars, and stopped at a private dock. A small, high-speed tender boat was waiting. She boarded it without hesitation. I watched through the camera zoom as the tender cut across the water, heading directly toward the largest, most extravagant superyacht anchored in the bay. It was massive, a floating fortress of steel and glass, and I recognized it instantly from business news headlines. It was the Midas, the private yacht belonging to Julian Vance. Julian Vance. The tech mogul, the trillionaire. The shock was physical. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a strategic career move. Amelia wasn't trading me for a fling. She was trading me for a financial future. This was a calculated abandonment plan executed on the highest possible level. I spent the rest of the day glued to the binoculars, confirming that the Midas was indeed Vance's. The dread turned into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just gathering evidence of infidelity. I was gathering evidence of premeditated financial opportunism. I waited. I watched the yacht for hours, understanding that Amelia was likely on board, cementing her new golden future. I realized she wasn't just trying to leave me. She was trying to upgrade. And she was doing it using my money, my time, and my trust as the springboard. If you think he's doing the right thing by investigating first and gathering irrefutable proof instead of exploding emotionally and ruining his legal position, leave a light. Most people would have stormed the docks right there. If you respect the strategic approach to dealing with calculated betrayal, tap that like button. The tension was unbearable, but I maintained my post. I knew the most damning evidence would be Amelia and Vance together, confirming the relationship wasn't just professional networking. The next afternoon, the moment arrived. I had my phone recording, zoomed in on the gangway of the Midas. Around 4 p.m., Amelia and Julian Vance emerged together. They weren't just walking, they were touching. Vance had his arm resting casually on the small of her back. They looked relaxed, intimate, and completely comfortable in the blinding Riviera sunshine. I captured clear, high-resolution video of them disembarking the yacht and stepping onto the tender, laughing together. This was the key discovery, irrefutable proof that Amelia Chen, the suburban mother, was living a secret life with Julian Vance, the tech mogul. As they stood on the dock waiting for their car, I adjusted the audio recording on my device, hoping to catch a stray word. Julian Vance leaned in, checking his watch, and spoke clearly. "We need to finalize the paperwork before the 5-year mark, darling. My legal team is getting twitchy about the timeline." The 5-year mark. I froze. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew enough about common law and divorce statutes in our state. The 5-year mark often referred to a critical financial milestone in long-term marriages, sometimes related to asset vesting or the maximum length of alimony eligibility under certain circumstances.
especially if one party could prove the other had committed financial abandonment or premeditated exit strategies. The realization hit me like a physical blow, shattering the last fragments of my old life. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a calculated plan. Amelia was timing her exit to maximize her financial gain, using the lie of the corporate retreat to establish a new, wealthier partner while maintaining the facade of our marriage just long enough to hit the optimal legal window. She wasn't just leaving. She was executing a hostile takeover of my financial future. I didn't feel anger. I felt a cold, terrifying calm.
My heart rate stayed low, my hands steady as I secured the footage and the audio. I realized that confronting her now would be disastrous. She would deny everything, lawyer up immediately, and spin the narrative to paint me as the unstable, jealous husband. She had planned this for months, maybe years, and I had just been handed the blueprint to her deception. The game had changed. This was no longer about hurt feelings. It was about protecting my assets, my children's future, and my dignity from a premeditated attack. I deleted my existing return flight and booked the first commercial flight out of Nice, scheduled for 6 a.m. the next morning. I left Monaco without a word, carrying the weight of the truth and the certainty that I had to beat her to the legal punch. I was going home to fight fire with ice. Comment below. Have you ever discovered something that changed how you saw someone completely? That moment when everything clicks into place and you realize the truth, that the betrayal was calculated and not accidental. Drop a comment if you've experienced that awful clarity. I needed to know I wasn't alone in this sickening realization. I landed back in Ohio feeling like a ghost. I walked into my house, and the suburban comfort that had once defined my life now felt like a stage set for a terrible play. Amelia was still in Monaco, oblivious, texting me sweet nothings about how much she missed me and the kids, complaining about the dull networking sessions. The first call I made was not to a friend, but to Laura Sterling. I knew her reputation. She was the best divorce attorney in the state, specializing in high-stakes cases involving financial misconduct and complex asset division. She was known for her methodical, ruthless approach. I needed a strategist, not a therapist. Laura Sterling met me in her downtown office, a place of cool marble and quiet efficiency. I laid out the story, the sudden trips, the $5,000 dress, the non-existent conference, the GPS coordinates, the yacht, the Midas, Julian Vance, and the phrase, finalize the paperwork before the 5-year mark. Sterling listened with an unnerving calm. When I finished, she nodded. Mr. Chen, this is not infidelity. This is premeditated financial abandonment. The timing of her involvement with Mr. Vance, combined with the efforts to conceal her location and activities, suggests she was strategically positioning herself. Your evidence, the video and the audio, is gold. We file first. We use this timeline of deception to prove she prioritized securing a wealthy replacement before the legal window closed on her ability to claim maximum support from you. Our strategic method was born instantly. Sterling mobilized her team. We spent the next 48 hours gathering every scrap of financial data. I provided her with GPS logs from Amelia's car, showing the frequent, unexplained trips to airports and downtown addresses I didn't recognize. Using my technical knowledge from my marketing job, I quietly accessed Amelia's shared cloud accounts, finding travel itineraries, receipts for luxury gifts I never received, and most damningly, preliminary legal notes she had saved months ago outlining potential asset division scenarios. She had been planning this for at least 8 months. Sterling established a strict timeline. Amelia was due back Sunday evening. We needed to file the petition for dissolution of marriage by Friday morning. This would ensure that when she stepped back into our life, ready to execute her exit strategy, she would be served with my papers first. The legal advantage of filing first, especially with evidence of premeditation, was immense. In the meantime, I had to maintain the facade. I acted overly affectionate on the phone, sending her texts about how much I missed her, asking about the conference breakout sessions. It was the hardest acting job of my life, smiling while knowing I was meticulously building the case that would dismantle her calculated scheme. For exclusive stories of justice and strategy like this, where people take control back and turn the tables on betrayal, consider becoming a channel member.
If you want more deep dive stories about people who successfully navigated these complex, calculated deceptions, the membership gives you access to content that goes even further. We are a community of survivors who refuse to be victims. The pressure mounted exponentially on Friday morning. I met with Laura Sterling one last time before the filing deadline. On her large conference table were stacks of documents, a detailed timeline of Amelia's deception, and a flash drive containing the Monaco yacht footage. Mr. Chen, everything is ready, Sterling confirmed, tapping the flash drive. We have the evidence of the Julian Vance connection, the proof of financial motive tied to the 5-year legal mark, and the timeline of concealment. This proves she didn't fall into a fling. She planned a financial trade.
This evidence will be devastating to her claims of being a financially dependent spouse who was suddenly abandoned. I signed the final documents, my hand steady. It was surreal. In a few hours, the papers would be officially stamped by the court, and my marriage of 12 years would legally begin to dissolve, initiated by me, the man who was supposed to be the victim. Later that afternoon, Amelia texted me, complaining about the endless, boring networking sessions, and confirming her arrival time at our local airport on Sunday evening. She even asked me to pick up a specific artisanal cheese for her welcome home grazing board. I went to the grocery store, bought the cheese, and prepared a welcome home dinner. The sheer absurdity of the situation, preparing a meal while knowing I had just secured her downfall in a court filing, was almost comical. I was calm, focused, and ready. My emotional turmoil had been replaced by the cold, exhilarating focus of a general executing a perfect military operation. I had turned her strategy against her. The trap was set. Amelia was stepping back into a life she thought she controlled, completely unaware that the ground beneath her feet had already been cleared by my attorney. I was ready for Sunday. I was ready for the confrontation, but more importantly, I was ready for the legal battle that would follow. I've pinned something in the first comment that might help if you're navigating a difficult relationship situation. There's information in the pinned comment about recognizing red flags and strategically protecting yourself before it's too late. Check it out if this resonates with your need for preparation. Sunday evening arrived. I had the house clean, the kids asleep, and the artisanal cheese laid out. I was sitting in the living room, ostensibly watching a basketball game, when Amelia walked through the door. She looked tired, but also strangely triumphant. She gave me a quick, tired hug, fake, of course, and immediately launched into a detailed, fabricated story about the brutal corporate retreat, complete with anecdotes about demanding clients and terrible hotel food. She was selling the lie one last time, setting the stage for her eventual planned exit. "It's good to be home, honey," she sighed, sinking onto the sofa, completely relaxed. She was likely planning to initiate divorce talks within the week, claiming exhaustion and growing apart. The doorbell rang. It was 8:17 p.m. I stood up, maintaining a neutral expression. "I'll get it. Probably the neighbor." I opened the door to find a sharp, professional process server holding a thick manila envelope. "Amelia Chen?"
I have legal documents for you. Amelia's jaw dropped. The color drained from her face as she watched the server hand me the papers, and I, in turn, placed them directly in her lap. "What is this, David?" she demanded, her voice rising in panic. "It's a petition for dissolution of marriage," I said calmly, "filed Friday morning." I filed first, Amelia. Her initial shock quickly morphed into rage. She crumpled the papers. "You can't do this. You'll regret this. I'll take you for everything. My lawyer will ensure I get the house, the 401k, everything. You know how much I sacrificed for this marriage." She attempted to bluff, using the threats she had likely practiced in the mirror. She was betting on my emotional collapse, on my fear of financial ruin. I walked over to the TV stand, picked up a small, sleek black flash drive, and handed it to her. "Before you call your lawyer, I suggest you look at the evidence I have already provided to my attorney, Laura Sterling," I instructed, my voice flat. "It's all there. The GPS logs, the financial timelines, and the video from Monaco." She stared at the drive, confused.
then slid it into the laptop I had strategically left open on the coffee table. She clicked on the main file, and the video began to play. The clear, high-resolution footage of her and Julian Vance laughing, touching, exiting the Midas yacht in Monte Carlo. The audio clip followed, Vance's voice echoing in our quiet living room. "We need to finalize the paperwork before the 5-year mark, darling." Amelia Chen, the ruthless social climber, the calculated strategist, was completely, utterly silenced. Her face went slack. Her bluff was called.
Her entire premeditated plan was exposed and dismantled in a matter of seconds. She realized in that moment that she hadn't just been caught, she had been outmaneuvered. If this moment of justice gave you any satisfaction, the super thanks button is right there. It helps me bring more of these stories to light. That feeling when the truth finally comes out, when the calculated betrayer is blindsided by their own victim. If this story has given you anything, even just validation, a super thanks means the world and keeps these stories coming. The aftermath was exactly as Laura Sterling had predicted. Amelia's initial rage quickly turned into desperate negotiation, but she had no leverage. Sterling used the evidence of premeditated financial abandonment, the Julian Vance connection, the concealed trips, the timing of the 5-year mark comment, to secure a devastatingly favorable settlement for me. In our state, proving that a spouse had been planning an exit strategy with a high net worth individual for financial gain severely limited their ability to claim long-term spousal support or a maximized share of marital assets. Amelia's attorney tried to argue that Vance was merely a business contact, but the clear video evidence and the documented timeline of deception made that impossible to maintain. Julian Vance, always hyper-aware of his public image and corporate responsibility, immediately cut all ties with Amelia the moment the divorce petition mentioned his yacht and his name. He didn't want the scrutiny, leaving Amelia stranded without her golden parachute.
Amelia attempted to spin the narrative among our social circle, painting me as controlling and jealous. But David Chen, the methodical manager, countered strategically. Sterling released carefully sanitized facts, the lack of the conference, the specific dates of the Monaco trips, the documented financial expenditures that quickly destroyed Amelia's reputation among our peers. Her social climbing ambition was exposed as a calculated, ruthless failure. In the end, the settlement was clean and swift. I retained the primary residence and my full retirement savings, 401k, which she had been targeting. Amelia was left with a fraction of what she had calculated, receiving minimal short-term support and forced to rely on her own limited resources and the small amount of cash she had hidden away. Her strategic financial trade had completely backfired, leaving her with far less than she would have received in an amicable, honest divorce. She had gabbled everything on deceit and lost. The pinned comment has more information about protecting yourself legally and emotionally in these complex situations. Everything about documentation, evidence gathering, and legal protection is covered in what I've pinned in the comments. Worth checking out if you want to understand the strategic side of survival. 6 months later, the house felt quiet, clean, and genuinely peaceful. The tension that had been a constant, invisible burden for the last year was gone. The divorce was finalized, and the finality of it brought not sadness, but immense relief. I spent those 6 months rebuilding my life, focusing entirely on my children and my career. The energy I had wasted on suspicion and maintaining the facade, I now poured into genuine self-improvement. I was sleeping better, I'd lost the stress weight, and I was even promoted at work. Ironically, because the intense strategic focus I developed during the divorce translated perfectly into managing complex marketing campaigns. I reflected often on Amelia's calculated plan. She hadn't been trying to find happiness, she had been trying to find security through wealth, viewing me and our marriage as an obstacle to be strategically navigated. The irony was that my methodical, documented counter-strategy, the very thing she never anticipated from her simple husband, was what ultimately stripped her of the security she craved. Truth, I realized, is always the strongest defense. I had a final, brief encounter with Amelia months later at a children's event. She looked tired, bitter, and significantly less glamorous.
She was living in a small, rented apartment, struggling to maintain the social status she believed she deserved. She didn't look at me with anger, but with resentment. The resentment of a defeated chess player. I, on the other hand, felt a profound sense of freedom and clarity. The pain of the betrayal had been immense, but the strength I gained from fighting back, from being strategic instead of emotional, was invaluable. I had gone from being a potential victim of a calculated plot to the architect of my own recovery. If this journey from devastating betrayal to strategic rebuilding touched you, supporting the channel helps me share more of these transformations. Stories like this of people who survived devastating betrayal and came out stronger, smarter, and more in control. They matter.
If this one mattered to you, a super thanks keeps them coming and helps reinforce the message that strategy defeats deceit. The greatest lesson I learned, the ultimate wisdom I gained from the collapse of my 12-year marriage was this: never underestimate the power of calculated financial motivation when dealing with betrayal. Amelia didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she calculated that Julian Vance offered a higher financial return on her investment of time. The perfect suburban life we lived was for her merely a financial countdown, a period of waiting until she could execute her exit strategy without legal penalty. My transformation, the shift from the heartbroken husband to the cold, methodical strategist, saved me everything: my financial stability, my home, and my children's future. The only way to defeat a calculated deception is with an even more calculated truth. So if you feel that familiar knot of suspicion, if you recognize the red flags of secrecy and sudden, unexplained ambition, remember my story. Trust your instincts. Document everything, no matter how small or insignificant it seems at the time. Consult with the best legal help you can find. And most importantly, always, always file first. The painful clarity I gained led me to a better, more authentic life, proving that even the most elaborate schemes can be undone by simple, verifiable facts, and the courage to fight back strategically. I am David Chen, and I survived the calculated betrayal. And I am stronger now because of it.